I'm Sabrina. Welcome to my coronavirus wedding Q&A. I just thought it would be an easy video, an interesting video to film. For anyone who might be new here, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Canadian, I live in Edinburgh, and I married a Scottish man. I think it would be good to start actually with a proper background of us, and to tell you what my dream wedding was. So I'm Canadian, I met Angus while I was in the youth mobility visa about halfway into my first year here. It's a 2-year-long visa, and we immediately were like, you're my person. You know when people are like, when you know, you know. I distinctly remember about 2 months into our relationship looking over at him on the train and being like, oh, that's my husband. Like, I could see him 60 years later, 80 years old, sitting next to me on the train. And it was like, I just knew. When I went to see my family, I was like, that's my husband. And so everybody kind of knew I was in that place, but it was a bit complicated, isn't it? We're not wealthy people. We can't just like have a big wedding and invite everybody to Scotland or everybody to Canada. It's a bit rude to do that without offering to pay for flights or accommodation or something. Everybody's kind of like, well, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? But the trick is, I really wanted to elope. That's like my dream wedding. My dream wedding is Kate Levy's wedding. And if you don't know who Kate Levy is, she's an interiors and like lifestyle blogger in Scotland, actually. Didn't know that when I first followed her. But she had this elopement in New York City, and I was like, that would be perfect. I was probably about 14 or 15 when I realized I did not want a big wedding. It was probably the same time I realized I had severe social anxiety. My mom knew that. My parents knew that. Angus knew that. And when we got engaged, I made it clear that like the engagement was like what I really wanted. Because I mean, in my mind, by the time we got engaged, I'd probably already been thinking of him as like my long-term life partner for 10 months. And not just like, maybe I'm gonna marry him one day. I was like, no, this is my husband. He had asked me to marry him, but like it wasn't a proposal, and I was like, get on one knee, bring out a ring. And then he had this like, I don't know what ring to buy you. I cannot find the perfect ring. And I told my mom that, and she said, take my ring. So when she came at Hogmanay, she brought a ring that I didn't even know existed because she never wore an engagement ring. I assumed she never got one. Turns out she got a giant one, and it lived in the bank in the safety deposit box. She brought a ring. Everybody thought he was going to propose, and then he didn't because he was too anxious. And then at the beginning of February, we had a very special night and he proposed. And everybody knew it was coming. And my family was like, she's not going to invite us to our wedding because she wants to elope. But it was important to Angus that his parents come. Like, he really didn't want to offend them. And I think because it's a normal thing, like, for you to be concerned about how your parents would feel if you just disappeared and got married and then told them. My parents would definitely probably also have been a bit hurt, though not offended, because I've been telling them for years I wanted to elope. So Angus really wanted to invite his mom, and I was like, you know what, like, that was a dream wedding for an invisible face. I would much rather get married with my parents here and your parents here, and have that sort of outlander elopement where we were gonna get married at City Chambers and then go for lunch with like our parents, his sister, and like our closest friends. That was our plan. Our wedding date was May 30th. It was gonna be Edinburgh City Chambers, which is a very special spot for me because it's where I started all my tours when I was a tour guide here for a year. I always started at Edinburgh City Chambers, and all these brides would come out, and it just looked like fun but low-key and stress-free, and I was like, if I got married here, that's where I get married. So, all to plan, right? If you're an international couple, you know immigration is a problem. You need to think about visas, and you need to think about moving, and are we staying in Scotland? Are we moving to Canada? What are we gonna do? And we were still in the, are we staying in Scotland? Are we moving to Canada sort of phase. We knew if we were married, we could apply for a marriage visa. We also knew because he's British, we could apply for a youth mobility visa to Canada. And I was very much like pro youth mobility visa because it's easier, like so much easier, and I'm allergic to paperwork. So I was like, let's just buy time for 2 years and do that. Obviously, we got engaged in February, beginning of February. Immediately we're like, we'll get married in the end of May. Like, we have plenty of time to apply for jobs in Canada, to think about maybe actually we do want to stay in the UK, especially like if I had a job here. We'll go where the wind takes me. That doesn't work, of course, in a global pandemic. Our plans changed We ended up getting married the 4th of July. We were one of the first couples to get married in Scotland. We had to get married outside. We still got married with city chambers, but it was not in city chambers. The registrars went down to Dunbar's Close, which is like a garden down an alleyway. Sounds weird. Still a really lovely venue. It's just different. We could have 6 guests. So Angus's parents and his sister and her partner came. That was my wedding. I then wrote about it in a few magazines. A lot of my photos got a lot of attention. 2 of my TikToks got a lot of attention. Oh, and one of my friends got to come. My friend Lena came because she was our photographer. So at this point in time, everybody had been in lockdown for about 4 months, 3 or 4 months. So cafes were just starting to open again for like takeaway. It was nothing like how it is now. And it was all very like, are we allowed to even have a photographer? Because that's 1 extra person. So she wasn't even allowed at the ceremony even though it was outside. And we could only meet her afterwards. So that's a bit about my wedding. And these are your questions about my wedding from Instagram. So a bit about like the logistics of the wedding. So people have asked if I did my makeup or get my hair done by myself. I had to. I did my makeup in our spare room. I cried about it. It was, like I said, everybody had been in lockdown for 5 months. Hair salons were not open yet. No one doing makeup was allowed to do makeup for I think another like month and a half, if not 2 months after we got married. It seemed like a long time after that. I did the exact makeup I am wearing here today with you. Someone complimented my dress. I've gotten a lot of compliments on my dress and I realized I forgot it. I'm going to show you what I wore. It is from Beholden, BHLDN, which is owned by Anthropology. It's a size US 6, UK 10. It's a bridesmaid's dress, it's a kari dress, it's a midi dress. I bought it online like right after we got engaged. I liked it, I thought it was pretty and I thought it would be like ideal. I also thought I would be able to get it altered if it didn't fit, and I was still planning to go to vintage shops in Edinburgh to look at dresses, but like you never know with a vintage shop. I wasn't that confident I'd find anything I'd like, so I bought this because it's also like it's something I could wear to a summer party. It's something I could wear again. It just sounds lame, but it was. So I was like, well, I'll just spend a bit of extra money to just have the comfort of knowing I have a backup, which thank God I did, because then my wedding came and coronavirus came. And of course I hadn't been able to go to a vintage shop. Pretty much after I bought this, we went into lockdown. So this actually worked out very well. However, it was intended to be worn inside and it didn't fit me properly. The top was really ugly on me. I remember the first time I tried it on. We have one of those closets that has mirrors on the front of it and like screeches when you open and close it. So that's a mirror I got to try this dress on with, my wedding dress. That was the first time I cried over my wedding. Because it was just like, this is so underwhelming. It was also like peak coronavirus time and I was just like, this is not what it's supposed to be. But it looked really nice in the end. I'm really happy with how it looked in the end. I wore it with this jumper that I'm wearing. This is my wedding jumper. I wear it all the time. It's from Zara. It's on backwards because I wanted that high neck, low back, which is pretty classic for weddings. I wore it with a belt and sort of like, if you see this, so it would have been a bit higher and I like tucked it so it rolled and the belt was hidden. So yeah, bridesmaid's dress, in case you're a bride or you're engaged or something, bridesmaid's dresses in white are way cheaper. My friend Jill taught me that. These are the shoes I was gonna wear this dress with. These were the only heels I owned. My heels that like I've bought throughout my life as a teenager, as a young adult, are all in Canada. These are the only heels I've bought in the UK, and the rest of my heels are boots, and I was not gonna wear boots on my wedding. That might explain why I cried. These are the heels that I bought last minute in tears with my sister on Messenger telling me what heels to buy. And I liked them actually a lot in the end because it wasn't the look I was going for. It was that like very sleek, modern city registrar's wedding. That is the look I ended up with. But it wasn't actually what I wanted, but I'm happy that it looked like a cohesive, purposeful look in the end. And I think the heels helped a lot. They were from Aldo, they were on sale, they were £30. And I'm really happy with them. Okay, there's a lot that will make me cry. But one of them says, did you exchange your own vows? We did. When you get married at City Chambers, they give you this like booklet and you get to pick the wording, different definitions of what marriage means, of what love means, about what commitment means, and things like that. And so you pick what is closest to you, or you can write in your own definition. And there was also the option to write your own vows, and I was like, we're doing that. There's only 4 guests. We can do it. So we wrote our own vows, and that is what made everybody cry. Someone asked me, how do you cope with the people judging you for getting married young early in the relationship? For early in the relationship, it's not actually that early. It seems a bit early. It felt like it was so much earlier in May, but in July it didn't seem as early. I don't know why, it's only a few months. But we'd been together for a year before we got married, or before we got engaged. I've been with Angus long enough for a relationship to evolve and grow and change, and to be honest, to get quite mundane and less exciting and less like honeymoon phase-y. Nobody really treated it like it was really early in the relationship, so I haven't got many comments about that. Getting married young, I get a lot of comments. So I got married just before I turned 24, and that is young by today's standard, I suppose. But Angus is 20, he was 26 when we got married, so that's pretty normal age to get married. So I didn't feel like it was that young, to be honest. And I also didn't feel like I needed to wait, coronavirus aside. I've never been like a very marriagey type of person. I'm not a religious person. I wasn't raised religious past the age of like 8. I'm not like, I needed to get married in my life. I was very much, I'm gonna be the cool aunt. I was writing a blog series on dating. I was like, I'm gonna be Edinburgh's new Carrie Bradshaw. And then I met my husband. So yeah, I do get comments about getting married young, but it doesn't bug me at all really, because I just think, well, like, you've got a messed up interpretation of what marriage should be if you think it's like you're at a certain age so now you must settle down, or you're not old enough to know what you want yet. Like, I don't think I'm gonna know more when I'm 33 than I do at 23. And I don't think I should not get married because I think I'm too dumb yet or I'm too naive yet. I don't think like that's the way to live, because so much can happen in 10 years. I mean, look at everything that's happened in the last year. In 10 years, I could be a completely different person, and maybe Angus and I won't be happy together, and maybe something will have happened that's broken us down. There are so many maybes, so I don't understand the concept of like, oh, I'm too young to get married, unless it's like, I don't want to be married yet. And that I do understand, but like I said, because I'm not traditional, I don't see getting married as like settling down. Angus and I are not about to have kids. We're like still living in rented accommodations, still wondering where we're gonna live next year country-wise. We are not getting to that place in our life where we're like married with kids type thing. And I think that makes a big difference. And I think that's why people are like, why did you get married so young? You still have so much more to do. And I just think you can do that while you're married. You can do that if you have kids, honestly. Like, it doesn't have to be traditional that way. This is a 2-part question. Question 1 is, how did your family take it that they couldn't be at the wedding? 2 was, I love the idea of an elopement, but I also don't want to be disowned by my family. So my family knew I wanted to elope, but I had also invited them to the May the 30th wedding, or at least I'd invited my parents. I had asked my dad to walk me down the aisle. I had made plans with my mom to stay in a hotel, and like, I had all these plans with my parents. So they weren't offended that they couldn't come to my wedding. They knew that we were on very tight timeline. They knew that coronavirus wouldn't make it safe. They knew that it just wasn't possible for them to be there. And they knew that we were going to have a second celebration in Canada. And I think, you know, if we had had a traditional elopement, of course we were going to celebrate with my family in Canada and Angus's family in Scotland. And maybe like some people would come to one, some people come to the other, and there would be a bit of an overlap. But it wasn't that way for my parents. You know, Angus's family got to be here and they didn't. And as much as they could make themselves okay with that, I think that probably hurt. It hurt me. I mean, I cried a lot over it, and I spoke to my mom. I don't know if she was upset, because she, I don't think, wanted to upset me anymore. But I imagine it was a bummer. And the second part of the question about eloping, if you want to elope, I think you should elope. And our solution to that was invite your parents to the elopement. I mean, elopement is a loose term these days. There are plenty of beautiful Highland elopements with like 10 or 15 people there. So you can have both, the best of both worlds. But if you're thinking, I want this wedding, but I have to have this wedding because my gran won't come to my elopement in the Highlands or this or that, it gets really easy to then have a wedding that you don't want and you're paying for something you don't want, or even if your parents are paying for it, like, you only get one wedding and you only get one first wedding is what I've learned. Like, I kept trying to tell myself when we were getting married, like anything that was happening that I was like, I don't want this, I would be like, but I'm having my second Canadian wedding. And now that I'm like in the middle of the two, I'm like, it doesn't make up for it. Like, the fact of the matter is my mom missed my wedding and I can't change that. You know, I didn't get to sit with my sisters on the morning of my wedding and get ready with them. And I can't undo that. I can do that at the next wedding, but the fact of the matter is I was nervous the first time. I'm not going to be nervous the second time. We'll have been married for 2 or 3 years at that point. And I had to get married alone, or not alone, but with Angus, and I didn't get that experience that you expect to get. That's in like all the movies and everything. Even if you're eloping, it's different because you intend for it to just be the two of you and you have that vision in your head, but we kind of did this hybrid and it hurt. And so if you can find a middle ground where you get the wedding that you want, then do that. I think if you invite them and you say, this is my wedding, you can come, then surely it's fine. I had a few questions. Like this one says, why didn't you postpone your wedding? No offense, I'm just curious. Someone else said, why did you decide to get married then? Why choose not to wait so your family could come? Because we couldn't. My visa was up in September, right? And I was on the youth mobility visa. So realistically, I mean, we could have postponed our wedding, but coronavirus is not going away. I mean, it'll be here forever, but it'll be managed better in the future is what I picture will happen. I mean, the bubonic plague is still around. It's just managed a lot better. We could have put it off, but we would have had to do long distance. I would have had to go back to Canada. Like I said, when I first looked at Angus and I thought, that's my husband, from that moment on, he was my husband. I'm not very traditional in weddings. It wasn't like after we get married, suddenly I'm now committed to him for the rest of my life. Like, in my mind, it already was. In my mind, we were already living in our home together as a family. I would have had to leave that to then wait, to then apply for an engagement visa and then come back here maybe and then apply for a wedding visa after we get engaged. But engagement visas only last for 6 months, so that would have brought us to about now, in which restrictions are going up again and who knows what's going to happen to the wedding industry. And it was just more money and it was more stress and it was more anxiety and would have been a lot more tears. I just wanted to be able to stay with Angus, and my parents knew that it wasn't worth it. Like, when you think of the things that I wasn't happy about with my wedding, not having my parents there is a big one, and that I can't change that. They will never have been at my wedding. We can go and have a Canadian wedding, but the fact of the matter is it's not my wedding day. That wasn't my wedding day. So that's sad, and I cried a lot about it, but I would have been devastated if I had to leave Angus. I think a lot of people thought I did it because I wanted to stay in Scotland. We didn't even plan to stay in Scotland this long. We didn't know where we would be at this time of the year had coronavirus not happened. We may very well have been in Canada. The months we spent in lockdown, knowing we couldn't get married, knowing we might have to be separated for who knows how long because of the pandemic, or we might have to worry about like, your visa's extended for this long but not for that long. It was just like, by the time we heard from City Chambers, you can get married in 2 weeks, we were like, oh my God. Thank God, thank God. And it was about a week before that I realized all the things that was gonna suck about it. It sounds so stupid to be like, you didn't realize your parents wouldn't be there. I did realize, but I didn't realize like what it meant. I was like, well, we'll have a Canadian wedding and they'll be there for that. But it didn't click all the things that were gonna happen. I didn't think about it. I was just so happy to be able to stay with Angus and be with Angus forever. So that's why we got married when we did. Had there not been tight time constrictions, I would have postponed it until my parents could be there. That was the most important thing. Next question is sort of related to that. How did you deal with your family re the wedding? My major struggle with Aussie-Scottish wedding. I feel for you. So my mom, like I've said repeatedly through this, my parents knew I wanted to elope, right? The only reason they knew that is because from the age of about 20, I knew I wanted to move to the UK for a little while. And I knew after I was done here, my 2-year visa, I might go back to Canada, and then I was gonna move again. Like, I wanted to be the cool aunt who moved around the world. I didn't want to stay in one place. And then when my brother got engaged, we started to talk as a family about weddings and this and that. And I was like, I'm gonna elope. And at that point, my mom knew I was moving to the UK, and she was so offended. Oh, and I was like, well, what do you expect? Because I can't ask everybody in our very large family to come on over to Scotland. Here, let's all go abroad and spend so much money to come to my wedding. It's really expensive, and you can't have half the wedding party come all that way and not pay for it. I don't think that's fair to ask of so many people. And I said that to her, and my mom was like, well, why wouldn't you just get married here then? And I said, well, what is his family gonna do? It's the same thing, just in reverse. So the nicest thing I said was to elope and then have a big party, which is kind of what we did. Except we kind of had a bit of a wedding without my parents there. Sorry, parents. But then if you're not something like, I already knew I wanted to elope. I already knew I didn't want to have a big wedding at the very least. So if you're someone who wants a big wedding, it's really tough when you're international like that. It's really, really tough. I mean, if you have dual citizenship, wait until you can afford to have a really, really big bash. If you don't have dual citizenship, I don't know what to say other than elope and then have a really, really big bash once you can. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, I'm going back up to some more questions. Were you a little bit scared? Yeah. And no. I was way more scared in the period where I didn't know what was going to happen in our relationship. I didn't know if I was going to be kicked out of the country. I didn't know for how long. I didn't know when we'd be able to get married. I didn't know when Angus would be able to go to Canada. Like, I didn't have a clue about what was going to happen. All I knew was that in every scenario where we didn't get married, Angus and I would be very unhappy. And that was scarier than, like, having to say vows. When we woke up on the morning of our wedding, it was really, like, we weren't very nervous until it got time to get ready. And then it was like, ooh, I feel like I'm getting ready to go to school when you have a big presentation. It was that kind of nervous. It wasn't like, am I making a mistake kind of nervous. Second last question. And it's from Lena, our photographer, and it says, what would you say to someone who isn't sure about getting married because it might get postponed? And I know Lena is very pro weddings right now. Obviously, she works in the industry, and she's very pro small weddings and sustainable weddings, like ethical weddings. I love her. She's great. But I've explained to you how anxious and stressed and upset I was before my wedding because I couldn't be married and I couldn't be with Angus beforehand. So I have a very different perspective than someone who just wanted to get married and did so. I am happy with my wedding because it was the best that it could be, because it had to be. Lena has had, since our wedding, tons of beautiful elopements and lovely, lovely couples, and I've seen it all on her Instagram. If you don't follow her on Instagram, you should. And it's really, really, it's really lovely. And I know our wedding looked like that as well, but we had to get married. For me, there was no other option. I wanted to be with him, and we had to do that to be together. But if you're just recently engaged, I suppose, and you're now trying to plan your wedding because you're thinking, I want to get married to this man or woman or partner, forget about the tradition and look towards having a small elopement style wedding if you can. So like we did, even how we planned it originally, if my parents weren't Canadian, if they lived somewhere else in the UK, they could have come to my wedding. Could they have though? Now that I'm saying that, there could have been a regional lockdown. There are less variables to worry about. However, there are still a lot of variables to worry about. If you're worried about things getting postponed and you want to have a traditional or traditional wedding with lots of people there, don't get married on the assumption you can make up for it. I did that. I was like, I'm gonna have my second Canadian wedding. Here I am, August, September, October. I'm only 3 months later and I'm already like, that's not gonna change the fact that my mom wasn't at my wedding. That second Canadian wedding I have, I'm gonna celebrate with my family. I'm gonna hug them really close. I'm gonna tell them I wish they could have been there, but it will not have made them have been there. My second thing is, Do not make plans based on what you want if it's something that can be thrown out by COVID. AKA, if you are worried about it getting postponed, you need to plan for it potentially getting postponed. I don't think they would postpone weddings without a lot of notice right now, but they could have regional lockdowns. They could have more social distancing. They could put people who need to shield into shielding. So if one of the reasons you want to have this traditional wedding now is because you've got an older person in your family and you're thinking, it's really important to me that Gran is at my wedding, don't know how much longer she's going to be around, you need to consider that you might end up having this entire wedding and Gran can't come to it because she needs to shield. And that's for her health. We can't forget the fact that it is a pandemic right now. It looks very romantic to get a wedding in the middle of a pandemic. It's this beautiful thing, but it is still a pandemic. You know, we hugged people on our wedding day. We could not do that if we went to a wedding tomorrow. Our wedding day was the first day we were out of our flat, seeing people for the first time in months. Right now, restaurants are open, things are starting to get scary again, where people are getting coronavirus. I mean, I've been isolating for 2 weeks because I had a cough. I couldn't confidently walk into a wedding and hug the bride right now. And that might be a deal breaker if you're the bride. I don't know. You know, if you don't live with your parents, can your dad walk you down the aisle? I'm sure that like chapels and places have decided whether that's allowed or not. I don't know if there's an exception for weddings. I don't know. But if you're planning one, that's something you want to think about and like Google it. I probably should have Googled it for this video, I'm sorry. Along with that, are you okay if people can't come? And are you putting people in an unfair situation? Is everybody you've invited comfortable going to a restaurant, for example? Little stresses at the end of the day don't matter. What the centerpiece looks like doesn't matter at the end of the day. Whether your bouquet is this big or this big doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because it's about the person and the feelings and the emotions. However, not having your mom be able to hug you on your wedding day is very different to not having the centerpiece you wanted. Not being able to have your wedding because you've suddenly got a tickle in your throat is a lot different to the bridesmaids' necklines aren't quite right. You know, it's different. So you need to think about those things when you're planning it. And it's very nice to picture a beautiful wedding and want that beautiful wedding, and you can have it, but you do need to consider all the other things. Both the things that you want and the things that come with coronavirus. It's not a fun thing to think about all the time, but it's worth thinking about because it's your wedding day and you only get one, probably. Basically, I had a very small wedding. You can't look at my wedding. If you're someone who's come from my Instagram, you can't look at my wedding pictures and be like, I want that. Because A, I was happy with it because I was so excited that I just got to be with Angus, that I didn't have to not sleep every night because I was so worried about what my life would look like in a few months, that I would lose this life that we've already started building together because we couldn't get married on time. I don't know. I kind of want to like renew my vows every 3 years. Just like go to a new country and renew my vows there. I had good vows. My very last question, I left it to the end. I don't know why. But am I gonna change my name? My friend Jill asked me this. Jill's the one who taught me about cheap bridesmaids dresses being good wedding dresses if they're in white. She says, will you be changing your last name? I'm going to, and it's very overwhelming. That is why I'm not. I am an immigrant. I have a passport for another country in this country. I don't even know if I can get a new passport in this country. The Canadian embassy is closed because of coronavirus, or it's at very reduced hours. I have a driver's license for another country that I could maybe transfer into getting a driver's license in this country, but I can't do that very quickly if I have to change my name in another country. I don't even know how I would do that because it's with the provincial government, not even the federal government. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you have other comments about weddings and my wedding, weddings in general, concerns about your wedding, and you think I have any advice I can offer, if you follow me on Instagram, you can message me. If you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram and message me. Just kidding. You can leave them in the comments. If you just want to comment, I also just like really like it when people leave nice comments. Please don't leave a mean comment. It makes me cry. I do a lot of crying in case you haven't noticed. Yeah, thanks. Bye. Do you want to see my cat? I'll go get her. See? Oh, I don't know if you can see her. Oh my god, it's a pretty girl. She's so sleepy. Kitty, she is a kitty, a boogie woogie. That's my cat. You were just born when we got married. Just barely born. There you go. She's sleepy kitty, a kitty girl. She hates when you pet her. Fun fact. Yeah, that's my cat. Bye.